Here we are under the front of the Lanchester again, and that square with the twisted wire coming out of it, that's the steering box, and at the end of that is the stator tube, which runs up the steering column to the steering wheel for your horn and your semaphore control. Now, I have been struggling to get the brass olive off the end of this for a while, and today I just went at it with a hand file and I've finally got it off. So now I can get the stator tube out and I can sort out the wiring that's running down the inside of that. This has been bugging me for a while, so I'll be happy to get this out. What should happen is you should be able to pull the centre of the steering wheel out. It should clear the head lining, hopefully, and then we can get all this wiring fixed as well. It's still got the brass olive attached on the other end, so I'm just very carefully teasing this out. I'm not using very much force at all. There we go. That's the olive fallen off, I think. Let's see how long this is. Ooh, that's quite long. Just, goodness me. So this is the twisted wire you could see sticking out the front of the car, and that's the end of the stator tube you see, and it just comes out. It only just clears the roof at the back, but you can do it. That's fantastic. That now means I can actually run some fresh wiring in here and get this all new as well, because that's not provided with the loom. I'm going to have to actually get some supplies to do that. Awesome. The thing that was causing me all the trouble getting this out was this little brass olive. All I did was I filed through until I could see the steel of the stator tube, and it being brass, it's nice and soft, so I just had to wait for it to break the seal. Hopefully I can get a replacement one of these, because that stops your steering box leaking, and hopefully it'll be easier to reinstall. This also means I can get to these screws in the back of here, because when I tried to do this the first time I did it wrong, and yeah, I need to rebuild all of that now. But I'm glad that's out. That's been bugging me for ages. This piece here is where all the wiring comes out of the stator tube and joins into the back of the horn boss and provides power for the semaphores. I need to rewire this. I need to unpick this. Now it looks like originally the old version of heat shrink was possibly wax. This seems like a wax sort of thing. And these connectors, there's a chrome headed bolt with a brass screw, and then the little eyelets there are a very specific shape to hold them in place. So I'm going to try and reuse these existing eyelets and unpick one and rewire as I go, because, well, I'm not really sure what else to do. We'll see how this goes. The reason for redoing the wiring here, in part, is because I'm redoing all the wiring, but also because this wiring is quite brittle and quite hard, and this wax that's supposed to isolate everything is quite crumbly. There we go. All the new wires in. It was a bit of a faff. I think these might be silver solder. My soldering iron doesn't go hot enough to release them, so I sort of had to unpick the wires, the old ones, and solder new ones in. I've used some heat shrink over the top to keep everything insulated, and now Pat is helping me feed the new wire into the stator tube. Originally I was going to attach these wires to the old ones, but it was proving really awkward to do. I couldn't find a comfortable way to do it, so we found another solution. I've used some electrical tape at regular intervals to keep this in place. Because the wire's insulated and this is a smooth tube, I don't think we're going to face any problems with wires shorting out on tubes or anything like that, so I haven't worried about getting a new sheath to help feed it through. As I push the wire through in this end, Pat pulls the wire at this end, and the way that we found seems to work best is he pulls this end slowly, and as he's doing that, I'm pushing the wire in from this end, and you can feel when the two sections of wire meet up. It's actually going very smoothly, a lot better than I expected. It's just difficult to record because of how long the stator tube is, so I will bring you back when we've got this all threaded in, and then we can look at rebuilding the horn boss. Having spent some time with these bits and pieces, I now understand why people don't rewire these things. It's difficult. There's a very useful little resource if you're trying to do anything LD10. I'll pop a link up on the screen and I'll put one in the description too. And it has basically everything you need to know to look after your car. All the various repair processes and that sort of thing. It's not exhaustive. Cars are always good at throwing new problems at you, but it is useful. When it came to doing the stator tube on our car and the horn push, there is a guide on the website, which I printed off because it was just easier, and it highlighted that they weren't the same stator tube or the same horn push exactly on every single car. The design must have been revised. However, it did give me some diagrams of how everything goes together, which I could compare with the pictures I'd taken of ours when I took it apart, and that helped a lot with reassembly. So as you can see here, there's a few extra bits and pieces, like this ring isn't part of our design, but fundamentally the parts are the same, the function is the same. Like this mechanism here is exactly the same. So this was very useful. The other thing it highlighted is just how difficult this is going to be to put together, because there's lots of these loose, tiny little bits of metal and springs that all have to be stacked in a specific order. So I've got these laid out here. This is your main assembly, so this is the semaphore control, which is on the top of the boss there. There's a little spring-loaded arm here, and the spring lives inside that hole in the middle. And on the back you have a notch which goes over the return spring mechanism here. It's going to be difficult to show you this being assembled purely because of how tiny these parts are, but I'll do my best. As you build the various layers up, everything needs to be greased, all the moving parts need to be greased. And that all has to go inside here. This is the main control boss piece. I don't have a specific word for it. I've already redone all the wires and the connections, and this is all nice new wires and heat shrinking, shouldn't be any problems there. Rather than that large brass ring on the diagram, this one just has this little tab here, a little nickel plated tab I think it is, and that just connects presumably to an earth point there. The leaves here for the horn push, this is a separate piece, and these two screws here go through to here and here. So when you put this screw through, you've got to go through the washer piece that these leaves are on, the eyelet for the yellow wire, and you've got to line up with this captive nut here and screw all that together. That's okay when it's like this, but when all of this void here is filled with all of these parts, we shall see. These 3 screws here hold it onto the stator tube here, which keeps everything in place. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to doing this bit, I'll be honest. But let's crack on. This is very difficult to record. I'll do my best for you. The problem is the amount of parts you need to hold and align as you go. So the first thing that you need to put in is the crescent piece of brass with the springs on, and it has a couple of little washers here and here which need to go either side of this mechanism. To put this in, there's also a loose brass piece and a spring. If you use a bit of grease, you can hold the spring in the hole that lives in there and hold the brass plate on. You can then put this end, which has a recess for this crescent shape here, on, making sure that the washers are either side, and then push that down into the middle. This piece here that you can not really see is spring loaded, so you have to make sure, again, a little bit of grease in there. Pop that in, but don't put it under tension, and then this piece, push this against the wheel to compress the spring and then click it into place, keeping an eye that this end doesn't jump out. I couldn't do all this on camera, I couldn't keep it in frame, and yeah, that's probably the most difficult part. The next bit is your little indicator leg thingies. And then I'll use a little bit more grease just on top of things, not a huge amount, just to make sure everything's lubricated and hopefully free moving. Now I can't move any of this, because if I try and move any of this now, all the bits that are under tension are just going to jump straight out. I'll be back to square one. So I have to get this greased and then get the relevant part of the boss together to hold everything in place, and then put the final screws in. I finally have it all connected, and at least as far as I can tell, all working. These screws here, there's a third one goes in there, is what holds this to the stator tube itself. I've got the screws in here for the horn leaves. I know that there was originally these little star washers. Now when I took this apart the first time, one of these just crumbled and fell off. That's the only one that remains, and because I've had to replace these, they're not quite the right length. I can't actually get the washers back in, but these themselves will sort of act like washers. There's a rivet behind as well. I think I can get away with it. I think I'll be okay. If not, at least I know how this all comes apart in the future. This as well, the motion on this is a lot nicer. Before it was a bit sort of sludgy, I think is the best way of describing it, and that's probably because of the grease inside being all gunged up. This one is terrible to do. You've only just got enough length with the screw, even with the original one, and just getting everything lined up is very difficult. But on the one in the diagram you have a ring of metal all the way around. On this one you just have this little tab. That's how it was when I took everything apart. As far as I'm aware, I'm the first person that's been in here, so I have to assume that's how it is. And yes, it did bite me. So I'm going to screw this down onto the stator tube, and we're ready to put it back in the car. Now obviously I can't put the horn ring back in yet. I haven't been able to find a return spring just yet. We're still looking. I've got parts numbers. If I find one before I get everything in the car, I'll tell you, blah blah blah. But yep, let's screw this down and get this ready to go back in the car. We learn as we go. I missed a piece. This car has self-cancelling indicators, which is a bit of a posh feature for the early 50s. And it means you have to install this, and there's a nub in here which operates the two legs here and pushes them back in as you turn the steering wheel. Or at least that's how it looks like it works. And that pops on there. There's then a felt ring here that goes in that groove, just around here, and that isolates it from the stator tube, presumably stops it squeaking and things as well. So we've got all that together, and I now need to get this piece, screw that back on there, keep this ring where it is, and then try and screw everything back together again. Yeah, I'm going to do that off camera. I think I've worked this out now. I've got the ring in here which works as your canceller, and I have to screw this onto this. There's a felt ring lives in this recess which I've put in, and Pat's just going to help me feed these wires through so we can get everything nice and snug, and hopefully I can have this all assembled. With Pat's help, we've got the stator tube attached to the boss now. The indicator mechanism still works quite nicely. I hope I've got this the right way round. What should happen is this tab here correlates to the steering wheel boss, and there's a little peg which pushes that, and that should cancel the indicators. I don't think it goes the other way around. I'll find out when I put it in the car. If it does, then obviously we'll change it round, but the next job is to reinstall this finally. Pat's going to give me a hand reinstalling the stator tube. It's a bit easier with one of us at each end, so he's going to feed through from the top, and I'm going to go down to the bottom where it's oily and dirty, and I'll be on the floor where I belong. Off you go then, it'll take a while to get to me.
Have you got that?
Well, have you started threading the steel bit through yet?
I'm just about to.
Yeah, it's going to take a while to get down here because it's quite a long way.
Alrighty, feeling some resistance.
And don't force it. Is it going? I can hear it.
Can you see it yet?
Oh, I can see some wires. I think. Is it getting stuck?
Yeah.
Hang on, let me come and have a look.
Can you see the wires?
Technical difficulties, one moment. We could see the red wire sticking out the end, but the others weren't quite making it, so we've taken them into a point and we're going to try again. That nearly got my eye. I'd say that worked. Is it sticking? Sorry. You lost the joy of doing that last little bit. Do you want to pull it out and do it again? Also it's upside down. Should be that way. There we go, that's back in, so let's do the doing up and hopefully we've done it right. We've just had to pull the horn boss out a little bit. Let me show you why at the other end of the tube. So this works really well as a way of getting the wires through. It's like threading a boot. And can I show you? Right, you can see there where the wires are coming out, there's a brass nut. Behind that is the end of the stator tube with the new olive on. I can only push the olive so far because everything's a bit oily. It's a good tight fit, but it's not too tight. We've pulled the stator tube back into the car until the brass nut touches the screw thread. Screwed it on a few turns, and now we're going to push the tube from the other end, the steering wheel end, slowly, so that hopefully this all seats home and pushes the olive up the tube. It's not the easiest job. Access isn't the best. With the stator tube pushed back into the car a little bit, you can see the ring here, which is your cancelling mechanism, and the little tab there, which is on the steering wheel, which helps operate the whole thing. I can't really show you it in bits because of the way it works, but basically when you put your indicators on, when you turn the wheel the other direction, the whole thing spins round and mechanically cancels and brings your indicator back to the centre again. So we've made sure everything's lined up to the best of our understanding, and we'll push this home, hopefully, and tighten up the brass nut at the other end, and then this should all work and we should be able to test things. We shall see.